The morning sun rose slowly over the tall towers of the Golden City. Its light spilled across white streets and shining walls. Birds with long tails sang above the gardens, and the smell of early flowers touched the air. It was the day when Captain Ethan Ward from Earth was to arrive at the castle of Princess Lysandra. Many people had heard the news and waited outside the palace gates to catch a glimpse of the visitor from another world. Ethan had traveled many days through the long quiet of space. He was both tired and excited. The mission was simple on paper, but heavy in meaning. He'd come as a peace envoy, sent by Earth, to build friendship with the royal kingdom of this distant world. The princess was known across planets for her beauty and wisdom. Few humans had ever met her face to face. Ethan had read reports, speeches, and records, but none of that could prepare him for what he was about to see. His ship landed gently in the marble courtyard. When the door opened, a soft breeze touched his face, warm and scented like sweet spice. He stepped down slowly, his boots meeting the smooth stone ground, and tried not to appear nervous. An officer in a dark blue coat greeted him with a brief bow and said he would be taken to the main hall where the princess awaited. Ethan walked through long halls with glass windows that caught every beam of light. The marble floors were so polished that he could see the reflection of himself. He had never entered a place so grand, yet so silent. When the two great doors opened before him, Ethan stood still for a moment. The hall was wide, with pillars like white trees and golden lamps hanging from the ceiling. The sound of music, quiet and calm, drifted from the far end, and then he saw her. The princess was standing near the throne, surrounded by her court. Her gown was pale and shimmered faintly as she moved. Her hair fell like a sheet of night over her shoulders, and her eyes seemed alive with something more than light. Every person in the hall bent slightly as she stepped forward. Ethan bowed too, feeling unsure of the right level of respect. When she spoke, her voice was clear, soft, and firm at the same time. "Welcome, Captain Ward of Earth. I trust your journey was safe." He raised his head. "Yes, Your Highness. It is an honor to be here on behalf of the Republic of Earth." He tried to sound steady, though his heart beat loudly. The princess smiled slightly and gestured for him to rise. "We have followed news of your world for many years," she said. "We are glad that humans seek peace, not conquest." Her words carried warmth, and Ethan found it easier to breathe. He replied, "Peace is our hope as well, Princess. It is what we travel the stars for." She looked at him for a few seconds longer than expected, her gaze curious and gentle. "You speak as if peace is a dream you chase across the sky," she said. "Perhaps it is," he answered lightly. "But it is a dream worth the chase." The corners of her lips lifted. Many of the courtiers shifted and murmured to each other. It was not common for anyone to speak to the princess in such open words, yet she did not seem displeased. After a moment, she invited him to walk with her through the hall toward the balcony. Through the tall windows lay a view of the whole city, a wide river winding through marble streets, towers rising like fingers of light, and people moving like threads in a grand painting. "The people below are proud and careful," she said quietly. "They fear change but hope for new light. I want to bring them that light. Maybe your people can help us." Ethan watched the city. "Maybe together we can build something worth both our worlds." The wind caught her hair as she turned to look at him again. For a moment, the silence between them felt like a meeting of two tides. She sensed this man was different from the rulers and traders who had visited before. There was no greed in his words, only an honest calm. Sensed in her a kind of quiet courage that few carried upon royal shoulders. Below them, the bells of the city began to ring for the noon hour. The sound rolled across the roofs and through the open balcony like a blessing. The princess looked toward the horizon and said softly, "Change begins today, Captain Ward. Let us see what fate writes." And with that, the first chapter of their strange and beautiful story began, written not in royal ink or law, but in the meeting of two hearts from faraway worlds under one bright sun. Ethan woke early the next morning to the sound of bells ringing through the palace towers. Sunlight poured through the wide window of his guest room, warm and golden. He stood by the window and looked at the city below. Streets were busy already, full of merchants guiding carts, children laughing, and guards marching across the squares. Everything felt alive and bright, but his mind was still full of the meeting with the princess from the day before. He had met many rulers, but none had spoken the way she did. Her words seemed simple on the surface, but there was something deeper behind them, as if she asked questions not only with her mouth, but with her eyes. He could still remember how her voice sounded in that long hall, calm and strong. Soon, a palace servant came to tell him that the princess invited him to breakfast in the garden courtyard. Ethan dressed neatly in his formal uniform and followed the servant through wide halls lined with tapestries and golden doors. The garden was almost unreal in its beauty. The air smelled of fresh water from the fountain, and flowers bloomed in colors he had never seen before. Birds with long blue tails hopped between vines, singing softly. The princess was already there, sitting at a stone table under an old tree. She wore a plain dress today, light in color, and her hair was tied back simply. When she saw Ethan, she smiled in a gentle, friendly way, not like a queen giving honor, but like a person greeting a friend. "Good morning, Captain. I hope you rested well," she said. "I did, Your Highness," Ethan replied. "Your city's full of light. It almost seems alive." She nodded. "Some say the walls remember every sound. Perhaps they do. Sit, please. We have much to discuss." Their breakfast was made up of fruits, bread, and a kind of warm drink that tasted faintly like honey. As they ate, they spoke about their worlds. The princess listened quietly as Ethan told her about Earth, its oceans, forests, and people. She asked questions about how humans lived, what they built, what they dreamed of, and are humans always restless? She asked with a hint of amusement. "Restless," Ethan repeated with a small laugh. "So maybe we are. We always look for something new, even when what we have is enough." She thought for a moment. "That sounds both brave and dangerous." "It is both," he admitted. "Curiosity can build worlds, but it can also break them if we aren't careful." Her face became thoughtful, and she looked toward the fountain. "In my court," she said softly, "many believe that safety lies in stillness. They think that peace comes only when things never change. But when I heard of your people traveling between stars, I began to wonder if peace can walk beside change instead of against it." Ethan watched her as she spoke. The morning sun touched her face and made her eyes brighter. She was not what he had expected, a ruler shut away by power. She was curious, real, and warm in her questions. When breakfast ended, she rose and said, "Come with me. There is someone you must meet." He followed her through a long corridor that opened into a great hall, filled with paintings and models of ships. She explained that her people had once begun their own journeys to distant skies long ago, but had stopped when fear and loss struck them. "My ancestors built these ships," she said, brushing dust from one model. "They reached for the same dream your people now chase. Maybe that dream was only waiting," Ethan said quietly. They walked side by side through the hall, and even the guards seemed to fade into the background. The princess looked at him as if seeing something new every few moments. "You speak as if you understand loss," she said. "We all do," Ethan answered. "My world has known both war and beauty. Sometimes they stand too close together." Her expression softened. "Then you understand my burden as well." They talked until the sky outside shifted from pale blue to sunset gold. Servants brought lighted lamps, but neither seemed ready to leave. The hours had passed unnoticed. Ethan realized he had told her more than he had ever meant to the way space looked from near a dying star, and how silence felt when he was far from home. The princess, in turn, spoke of her mother who had ruled before her, of the choices that came too soon, and of the loneliness of wearing a crown. Her voice trembled only once, but Ethan heard it. As evening fell, they stood on the same balcony where they had first spoken. The city below shimmered in torchlight. "You have given me much to think about," she said softly. "Your kind carries more heart than the tales," he smiled. "Tales are often written by those who never meet the people they speak of." The princess turned toward him, her eyes catching the starlight. "Perhaps," she said, almost whispering. "It will not be the last story we share." Ethan bowed slightly, but his mind was far from formality. He sensed that something more than diplomacy had begun, quiet but growing with the light of each new day. The day of the Festival of Lights arrived with great excitement across the city. Everyone from the smallest child to the oldest woman seemed to carry some part of joy in their hands. People gathered in the main square to hang shining lanterns that would rise into the sky at sunset. It was said that each light carried a wish, and when the lanterns reached the stars, those wishes would be heard by fate. Ethan had heard about the festival from the princess during one of their talks. She had told him it was the most important celebration in the land. It marked a time of peace, new beginnings, and hope. She had personally invited him to walk beside her during the ceremony, which was an honor few ever received. Many in the palace whispered about it, but none dared to speak their doubts aloud before the princess. When the sun began to lower, the sky turned soft with colors of orange and pink. The streets glowed with lanterns, music, and laughter. People danced, and ribbons of light waved through the air. Ethan stood near the gates of the palace, wearing the traditional white garments that had been prepared for him. He felt uneasy at first because the people watched him with curious eyes. But the warmth in their faces soon replaced his worry with quiet comfort. Then the crowd went silent. The palace gates opened and the princess stepped out. She wore a gown that shimmered like silver dust, her hair crowned with a small circle of white flowers. For a moment, the crowd seemed to stop breathing. She walked slowly down the steps with grace so natural it hardly looked human. Beside her, Ethan felt plain, awkward, and very aware that every eye was on them both. She stopped near him and gave a small smile. "Captain, will you walk with me?" He nodded and offered his hand. She placed hers gently in his, her touch light but steady. Together they began to walk through the path lined by rows of lanterns. The sound of soft music followed them, mixed with the rustle of robes and the gentle hum of the crowd's awe. Children ran past them, carrying unlit lanterns to the central fire. The princess leaned closer and whispered, "Each lantern is meant to be a promise. Some promise love, some promise truth, others promise courage." Ethan smiled. "And what does your lantern promise?" She looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "That we may all find something worth believing in," she said after a pause. When they reached the center of the square, the city's great bell rang once, deep and clear. The people raised their lanterns, flames flickering inside like tiny hearts. As the final note faded, the air filled with a countless number of glowing lights floating upward. It was as if the night itself was blooming. For a moment, Ethan forgot he was far from home. He felt part of something larger than himself. The princess watched the lights rise with wonder. Then she turned to Ethan. "You humans have a strange way of seeing the world," she said softly, "always searching for meaning in the ordinary." He looked at the sky. "Maybe we search because we fear losing what is beautiful before we can understand it." Her eyes softened at his words. "Then may you never stop searching," she said, and her hand tightened slightly around his. Later that night, after the crowds returned to their homes, the princess and Ethan stood alone in the palace garden. The air smelled faintly of smoke and flowers. The glow from the floating lanterns could still be seen far away like stars dancing. "You spoke before of dreams," she said, her voice low. "Tell me, Captain, do you dream of returning home?" He took a slow breath. "I dream of peace. Wherever it may take root," he answered. "I can sow one small seed of trust. That will be enough." She looked down, thinking, "You sound less like a soldier and more like a poet." Ethan smiled. "In my youth, I was neither. But sometimes war teaches poetry better than books." She studied him carefully, then said, "You are unlike anyone I have met. Not just in speech, but in heart." Her words carried a quiet weight. For a long time, they said nothing, letting the silence between them tell its own story. The fountains whispered, the wind moved through the trees, and far above, the last lanterns faded into the horizon. Before leaving, the princess reached into a small basket beside the fountain and took out a single lantern. A gift. She handed it to Ethan. "A gift," she said. "Make a wish, Captain. Even humans are allowed to hope beneath our skies." He smiled faintly, touched more deeply than he could say. "Then my wish," he said, lighting the small flame inside, "is that hearts like yours will always guide worlds like ours." The lantern rose slowly, golden against the night. The princess watched it climb higher, her expression soft but filled with thought. When the light disappeared into the stars, she whispered almost to herself, "And mine is that you never stop shining wherever you go." Ethan did not answer, simply stood beside her. Both of them looking upward, two souls from different worlds joined for a quiet, unplanned moment of peace. The festival ended, but that night lived on in their hearts, bright as any lantern that had ever reached the sky. The morning after the festival was quiet. The city slept longer than usual, resting from a night of joy. Only the cool wind moved through the empty streets, carrying the faint scent of burnt oil from the lanterns that had floated away into the stars. Inside the palace, however, peace did not last long. The council of nobles had gathered early. They were not pleased by the sight of their princess walking hand in hand with a human before all the people. To them, it was shameful and dangerous. They feared that such closeness might weaken the throne and turn the people's hearts towards someone not of their kingdom. When Princess Lysandra entered the council chamber, the air was heavy and cold. Men and women in dark robes bowed stiffly as she took her seat. The eldest noble, Lord Carvin, spoke first. "Your Highness," he said, "the council is troubled by your public behavior during the festival. You stood before the crowd with the human envoy, as if he were your equal." The princess held her chin high. Her voice was calm but steady. "He is an honored guest and a friend to our land. I showed him respect, nothing more." Another council member leaned forward sharply. "Respect can be mistaken for affection. The people whisper about it already." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Then let them whisper. I will not govern by fear of words." Murmurs filled the room, and the nobles exchanged worried glances. They feared her strength, but could not deny her power. Finally, Lord Carvin struck the table with his staff. "You endanger more than your name, Princess. You endanger the alliance with the Northern Lords. They see your closeness to this man as a threat. You may withdraw their support." The princess stood. The movement silenced them all. "If our alliances depend on my silence and not on our honor, then they are already weak," she said firmly. "Captain Ethan Ward has brought knowledge and friendship. He seeks peace, not power." She turned to leave, but Lord Carvin's voice followed. "Then let him prove it. Send him home. If his friendship is true, distance will not destroy it." She paused. For a moment her expression did not change, but something inside her shifted. Without replying, she left the room. In the courtyard below, Ethan was walking with two palace guards, studying the stone carvings along the walls. When he saw her walking swiftly toward him, he sensed her mood at once. "Princess," he said softly, "you look troubled." "They want you gone," she said without delay. "The council believes our friendship brings danger." Ethan looked surprised but not afraid. "Then let them think as they will. I came here to speak of peace, not to cause unrest." "It is not your fault," she said. "It is theirs. They do not yet see what I see." He wished he could ease her burden, but he knew the limits of his place. "If leaving will protect your throne, then I will go," he said carefully. Her gaze lifted to his face. "You would just go." "I gave my word that I came here to serve peace. Sometimes peace asks for silence, sometimes for departure." For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind moved between them, cold and quiet. She finally said, "You speak with great wisdom, but you forget that peace also needs courage." He smiled faintly, and courage can sometimes look like obedience. That night, she stood alone in her chamber, looking down at the city below. From her window, she could see the courtyard where Ethan walked toward his ship, preparing for departure. Her heart felt heavier than the crown she wore. An attendant entered quietly with a message from the council. It ordered that the human envoy must leave before dawn. The princess sighed and sent the woman away. She could not fight them all at once, not yet. Before sunrise, she went to the hangar where his small vessel waited. The lights from the engines made the metal glow faintly blue. Ethan stood near the open door, a small pack slung over his shoulder. When he turned and saw her, surprise crossed his face. "I thought you would not come," he said. "I had to," she replied quietly. "I did not want to let you leave without a proper goodbye." He nodded. "Then goodbye, princess." But she shook her head. "No, not goodbye. Only until we meet again." He looked at her with sadness and admiration mixed. "Do you believe that will ever happen?" "I must," she said softly. "If not, what would all our words mean?" He looked around at the dawn breaking through the windows. "Your people need you, Lysandra," he said in a low tone. "Do not lose your fire because of me." She stepped closer. "You remind me what true fire is," she said. "It is not the one that burns cities. It is the one that lights hearts." She reached for his hand. It lasted only a moment, but it was enough. No words followed. The engines began to hum. As Ethan stepped inside the ship, their eyes met one last time. Then the door closed and the craft lifted slowly into the sky. The princess watched it rise until it disappeared into the morning light. In the quiet that followed, she whispered to herself, "If peace must cost me his presence, I will still protect it, but I will never forget him." The sound of the ship faded, but in her heart, the echo of that moment stayed alive, a silent promise that neither the stars nor the distance could ever truly erase. Years passed after Ethan's departure, but the memory of his visit lived in the hearts of many. The people still spoke of the Festival of Lights when their princess had walked with a man from the stars. Children retold the story with wonder, and even the elders, who once whispered in disapproval, now spoke of that time with quiet respect. Princess Lysandra ruled wisely and justly through those years. She learned to guide her council with patience, and her speeches reached far beyond her palace. Under her rule, the city grew brighter, trade flourished, and peace lasted longer than it ever had before. But even in moments of triumph, she would sometimes stand by her balcony and look up at the sky. She never said his name aloud, yet her eyes searched the stars as if waiting for one familiar light to move again. Her closest attendants saw how her smile changed during those quiet hours. It was soft and distant, as though a part of her heart still wandered through space. Many young men of noble birth sought her hand in marriage, offering power, treasure, or alliance. She turned them all down kindly. Her reason was always simple. Her duty came first, and her heart was already bound by promise to her land. Only she knew that another truth lived beneath that calm answer. Far away among the stars, Ethan also remembered. His work for the Republic continued. His name became known as one of those who brought peace between distant worlds. Yet something inside him never rested. Every time he looked out through the ship windows, seeing the endless sea of light, he saw her face in those distant stars. Sometimes he caught himself whispering to the quiet air, as if she could somehow hear him across the dark distance. One night, while passing through a sector close to where her world was mapped, he saw a faint signal on his screen. The code was old, but familiar. It carried the seal of her kingdom. Curious, and almost trembling, he opened the transmission. A celebration was planned to mark 10 years of peace among the worlds. The princess had invited all envoys who had ever aided the treaty between Earth and her kingdom. For the first time in years, he smiled fully. He set the course at once. When the royal palace announced the return of the Earth envoy, the news spread quickly. People hurried through markets and streets talking about the man from years past. Some were children back then, now grown, eager to see if the story of their princess and the human was true. The day of the gathering came. The sky was clear, and banners waved in bright colors. The city looked as alive as it had during the festival long ago. Guards lined the road leading to the palace, and each balcony and rooftop was full of curious faces. Inside, Princess Lysandra waited in the great hall. Her dress was simple white, her hair held under a small golden band. Time had changed her, giving her face more wisdom, but the same calm grace. When the great doors opened, and Ethan walked in, silence filled the hall. He bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice firm but filled with feeling. She stepped forward slowly. "Captain Ward," she said, "you kept the promise of peace." He looked at her, quiet for a moment. "And you kept hope alive," he answered. The council and nobles stood back as the two of them spoke. They talked at first about the treaties, the new schools, the science shared between their worlds. But after the formal words ended, they walked to the garden where they had once shared breakfast so many years before. The garden looked almost the same. The fountain still whispered, and the same tree spread its branches wide. The air carried the scent of the same bright flowers. "I used to come here when I missed you most," she said softly. "I wondered if the stars would ever bring you back." "I came every time I could," Ethan said. "Even when the council refused, even when orders sent me the other way. Part of me always turned toward you." She looked at him quietly. "I thought love would fade like a passing season, but time has only made it clearer." He smiled. "And what does it tell you now?" "That peace matters," she said. "But so does the heart that believes in it." They stood side by side as the evening light turned golden and soft over the city. The bells began to ring again, calling for celebration. People outside cheered for the long years of peace, not knowing that the true strength behind it was standing in the palace garden side by side. The princess turned to him and said in a gentle voice, "When I saw you walk away all those years ago, I wished I could wed someone like you, human. Someone brave, kind, and true. I thought it was only a wish. But perhaps some wishes wait for the right time to live." Ethan took her hand lightly, his eyes warm. "Then let this one live," he said. She smiled, and the city lights rose again into the night sky, glowing like the dreams they once shared. From that day onward, two worlds walked together in trust, and their story became more than a tale told by elders. It became a reminder that love can outshine distance, time, and even the stars themselves.